and they've decided to try to protect other people against what they and their loved ones went through. So why don't we start at the very beginning, at the very end of the panel, I'm sorry, with a self-introduction. I'd ask each of you to spend just 2 minutes explaining to our audience how you ended up on this panel today.
Thank you. My name is Todd Anderson. I arrived here today as a parent of a wonderful young man, Skylar Justice Anderson Coughlin, 17 years old, and up until the point of the tragedy, had done absolutely everything right in his life. Weeks before, we had just toured Yale, Stanford, UC Berkeley. He had plans to work for Apple Computer. He played 5 instruments. He had any number of accomplishments in his lifetime, and absolutely was doing everything right. Was driving on a highway and was driving a vehicle which was under recall, and I had not been notified. And Skylar was rear-ended by a speeding tractor trailer which was carrying U.S. mail, and the vehicle he was driving at the time exploded instantly. The crash was a chain reaction as a result of a couch that was dropped onto the highway. And I expected, at the point of this tragedy, support, justice, and so I was looking for answers. And the reason why I'm here is to be an advocate, to try to help along the process and actually change the process and the system so that not just tragedies are prevented, but the process which ensues afterward is improved.
Thank you. Thank you. Todd?
Yes. Well, the reason I started was to find out what happened. And what I found was that process in itself was very difficult. So I'm an advocate for transparency, for disclosure, because without that, you cannot have accountability, we can't have prevention, we cannot have justice. What I found was, even 3 years later, still unable to obtain 911 calls, alcohol test, drug test, media of the driver who rear-ended my son. The other part was I learned that the vehicle my son was driving was under recall and had been for a number of months, and owners were not notified. I received a notice about a year after my son passed away. So I am also an advocate for a change in the recall process. In fact, one step that I took was to attend a DOT NHTSA hearing and speak publicly and be permanently on record and make recommendations, which I was heartened to see are actually hopefully being implemented. One example is that during the registration process, a new owner is not made aware by Department of Motor Vehicles, for example, of the vehicles under recall. So even if notices go out, what owners may do is say, well, I don't want to drive this death trap, and then sell the vehicle at a very low price, and then to a new unsuspecting owner, who then goes to Department of Motor Vehicles and has no idea during the registration process. And I agree these cars vehicles should not be on the road at all, but at the very minimum, people who are driving them and owning them should be aware of what's going on here. And so we find that disclosure is really ground zero of any sort of justice or prevention. Yes. Yes, absolutely. It was trying to gain access to information, whether through the police, and then also through any attempted methods were dead ends. Hearings, Freedom of Information Act requests. To be able to access information of what happened was singularly the most frustrating thing afterward, because there are laws on the books. Freedom of Information Act apply, get access to public information, such as 911 calls. The fact that 3 years later one cannot access that, to me, is unconscionable. And so there should be absolute transparency. And actually, it causes further delay in calculating and tabulating the data that goes into a recall process. So if it takes 3 years to access information, that's 3 years that people are dying.
Let me ask a personal question for each of you to respond to. Is it hard to do what you do? I guess I'm not really asking you about what it's like on a day-to-day basis in terms of just the challenge of getting to the goal, but rather, on a personal level, do you ever feel, I know you used a word, at one point you were just ready to throw in the towel. Do each of you ever come to the point where you just feel like you can't go on? Do you find that your families are with you, or sometimes do you feel like you're way out there ahead of them and they want to move on? I mean, I've seen that myself in people in your circumstances, and it's easy to understand. And so, have each of you ever experienced that, and how do you get past that? How do you deal with that?
I personally have never felt that I wanted to give up. I feel the opposite, very energized, very impassioned about this. I feel a lot of support from family and friends. What I do feel is that at the acquaintance level, at times people will say, oh, I hope you find peace. I hope you get past this. Without realizing I'll never get past it. But being involved is a sense of purpose. It's a connection with my loved one. It's something I don't ever want to give up. And I feel like it has meaning and purpose, and I have not been yet wanting to give up. There are times I'm exasperated, but that just energizes me more. What I would recommend is that in coping, surround yourself with resources, not just one law firm. I recommend actually multiple law firms, because then with strengths, who then interact and can find the best path, if you will. Leverage all the resources. The press is another one. What I found was a ton of misinformation out there. It's very important to get out there and overturn that information, to get on record who your loved one was and that there was no wrongdoing going on here, because what I found was that a lot of the press and official information was inaccurate and incorrect and almost designed to make the situation look worse than it was and make fault of the victim. There's all of this that should be leveraged, and it comes from within, from the love you have with the loved one. I would add to heal and be as positive as possible. Make and keep and hold and cherish a positive connection with your loved one, and not let your connection be defined by the catastrophe. Your loved one did not ask for this, and it brings all the positivity to life that should continue and not stop as a result of this tragedy. So I would just say maintain a positive connection, and that will also add to your passion, because it's very easy to become embittered in the process.
Thank you all again. Thank you.